Dobar dan, dobri ljudi, dobrodošli na još jedan podcast ПОПKultura, a danas sa mnom vidite Bera se transformisao.
Evo, puno znači krema.
Puno znači krema. Danas sa mnom Geri, a malo kasnije ćemo objasniti zašto Geri sedi ovde pored mene, a ne Bera. Za vas koji nas prvi put gledate, ovo je podcast ПОПKultura koji se bavi temama raznim koji nas okružuju. Ja sam sveštenik Protestantske Hrišćanske zajednice, obično sa mnom ovde sedi, kako sam ovde na početku rekao, Bera ili Dušan Bereć i Bera, koji je pastor takođe ove crkve i nas dvojica smo domaćini ovog podcasta. Ideja celog podcasta jeste da razmišljamo o temama koje nas okružuju, takođe da razmišljamo i o fenomenima, o filmovima, o umetnosti i pokušamo to da donesemo u naš kontekst i da probamo da sagledamo to iz ugla Svetoga pisma, kako to uvijek na početku i kažemo. I takođe, pored filmova što želimo da radimo jeste da imamo više gostiju i pored toga što želimo da imamo više gostiju, želimo da obrađujemo i neke teme, a ne samo filmove ili serije. Tako da danas, pre nego što krenemo u samu temu i da vam predstavim šta će se danas dešavati, molim vas zapratite nas jer nam to puno znači da podcast ode što dalje. Podelite ovo jer ili zapratite našu stranicu, to nam baš puno znači. A danas Geri ovde sedi sa mnom zato što je doveo jednog posebnog gosta i sa nama je gost koji dolazi iz Irske.
Tako je, Severne
Irske.
Northern Ireland.
I sa nama je danas David H. Glass. David, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Welcome, professor.
Danas će podcast biti simultano prevođen, znači Geri će prevoditi, ja ću pokušati da pričam na engleskom, tako da oprostite mi na ovome što ću govoriti.
So Gala is going to be speaking and you're going to be speaking in English and I will be attempting to translate you.
A sve u cilju da vi možete, u slučaju da ne znate engleski, da možete da razumete ovo što pričamo.
If you don't speak English, that people could understand.
Današnja tema je vezana za veštačku inteligenciju.
So tonight's topic is AI.
I David je stručnjak u ovoj oblasti.
And David is an expert of this field.
So David, welcome and thank you for coming to our podcast.
Hvala što si došao, David.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
Bolje vas našao, hvala što mogu da budem tu.
This is your second time in this room.
Ovo je tvoj drugi put da si u ovoj sobi.
Yeah, that's right.
To je istina.
That's about a year ago that
to je bilo pre godinu dana.
The last conversation here.
Posljednji put tu.
So basically we don't use this studio.
Obično ne koristimo ovaj studio.
For POPKultura.
Za POPKulturu.
We are using the church building.
Obično smo u crkvenoj zgradi.
But because of busyness in the last past day, we stay in this.
Ali zbog žurbe ili tako zauzetosti sad ćemo ovdje da snimimo.
So Bera was really nice and then give us this room for shooting POPKultura.
Very good. It's nice venue for it.
Yeah.
Bera bio dobar i dao nam ovo mesto.
So how it's your time in Serbia?
Kako vam je ovdje?
Oh, it's been great so far. I only arrived yesterday.
Za sad je super, tek sam juče stigao.
So that was late last night in Belgrade and spent the morning in Belgrade and just traveled up here traveled to Novi Sad this afternoon.
I došao sam do Novog Sada posle podne.
I've been enjoying it so far and have had great hospitality and great food.
Nice.
I za sad mi je bilo sve super, odlično gostoprimstvo, odlična hrana.
Yeah. That is Serbia. We are really hospitable.
Exactly, yeah.
So, why you came here? Maybe you can give us short.
Zašto ste došli ovdje? Možda možete nam dati kratko.
Maybe you can introduce yourself so for people that don't know you.
Par reči u vezi sebe za ljude koji vas ne poznaju.
Yeah, so I'm from Northern Ireland, from just outside the city of Belfast.
Ja sam iz Severne Irske, iz Belfasta, iz okoline Belfasta.
So I work at Ulster University, where I'm part of the School of Computing.
Radim na Ulster univerzitetu gdje sam gdje izučavam veštačku inteligenciju.
So I work in computer science and mathematics, those sorts of areas, and increasingly in artificial intelligence.
Tako da radim u matematici i u nekim drugim područjima, ali sve više i više u oblasti veštačke inteligencije.
But I've also been interested in science and faith in general, and also how artificial intelligence relates to Christian faith.
Ali također sam zainteresovan za problematiku nauke i vere i u vezi mesta veštačka inteligencija u tome.
And that brings me to your question about why I'm here in Serbia.
Tako da sam zbog toga i tu u Srbiji. To je isto deo.
So it's really to give some talks at universities where I'm looking at some of these issues about artificial intelligence.
Tako da planiram imaću neke govore na fakultetima gdje ću govoriti o veštačkoj inteligenciji.
For example, about whether AI could become conscious and its implications for the future of humanity.
Tako da govorit ću o tome da li veštačka inteligencija može da postane svesna i implikacije njegovog postojanja za našu budućnost.
So exploring those sorts of issues and also thinking about how they relate to a Christian perspective, especially in terms of what it means to be a human being.
Tako da ću istražiti sve te oblasti i također iz hrišćanske perspektive šta to znači za nas iz hrišćanske perspektive u vezi toga šta je ljudsko biće.
That's amazing.
To je odlično.
So maybe I miss, but how long you are doing all of this?
Koliko dugo radite ovo sve?
Yeah, well, I've been ever since I was a student. I had a real interest in these kinds of topics about science and faith generally.
Već od svojih studentskih dana sam imao interesovanje za pitanje nauke i vere.
So even I guess I don't know, 25 years ago, I was giving some talks on science and belief in God.
Već prije nekih 25 godina sam govorio na temu nauke i vere.
But it's probably more in the last 8 to 10 years that I've been giving talks of this kind in Eastern Europe, in Belarus and some Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Czech Republic, so different countries in Europe as well as back at home in Ireland and the UK.
Ali tek u posljednjih 8 do 10 godina sam počeo da govorim u istočnoj Evropi, u Belorusiji, u Bosni i Hercegovini i celoj na području istočne Evrope, ali također i kući u Severnoj Irskoj.
And I suppose it's during that period that a lot of the focus has been on artificial intelligence. So
I tokom tog perioda je veštačka inteligencija ušla u fokus interesovanja javnog mnjenja.
So I would also give talks about science and faith, and also just about other reasons or objections that people have to Christian belief. But increasingly in a university context, the interest is in AI.
I govorim ja i o nauci i veri i šta to znači za naš život, ali u kontekstu fakulteta sve više i više je AI u centru pažnje.
Yeah, that's true. So I need to commit. So when I was preparing for this podcast, I went to ChatGPT and I asked questions. So I already told you that I prepared this question. Actually, I was explaining everything to ChatGPT, this kind of talk we will have. This is podcast. The character of this podcast is Christian, and so. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Gale se ispovedio i ja sam šokiran. Da se pripremio za govor o veštačkoj inteligenciji na osnovi veštačke inteligencije, pitao ChatGPT šta misli o sebi, šta misli o veštačkoj inteligenciji, šta da pita da da pitanja,
pitao sam pripremio sam da mi da pitanja za ovaj razgovor. So I explain who you are and I explain who we are,
Tako da sam mu objasnio ko si ti, ko smo mi.
And ask him questions. So he gave me I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different session of questions.
I dao nam je 4 kao raznih setova, 4 grupa pitanja.
Maybe I should also use ChatGPT to generate some answers to these questions.
Također bi mogao odgovoriti preko ChatGPT.
Please don't.
Nemoj, molim te.
So yeah, and I was slightly satisfied with that,
Bio sam zapravo, svi su dobre, svidjeli su mi se.
I sent Gary, I sent my pastor Bera, and they were like, oh, that's cool, and then I confessed, it's ChatGPT.
I Gary i Bera su rekli da su ta pitanja okay. Gary, to sam ja.
So let's try them. So
ajde da ih isprobamo.
So say introductory questions.
Tako da uvodna pitanja.
So how did you become interested artificial intelligence?
Kako si se zainteresovao za veštačku inteligenciju?
And how does it impact your everyday life?
I kako ona utiče na tvoj svakodnevni život?
Oh, well, there's a long story in terms of how I got interested in it.
To je veoma dugačka priča u vezi toga kako sam se zainteresovao.
So when I was a student, and this is going back to the early to mid 90s.
Tokom mojih studentskih dana u srednjim 90. godinama.
There was a lot of interest in AI back then as well.
I tada su već ljudi bili prilično zainteresovani za AI.
There had been some very prominent books written about whether AI was possible.
I pisali su ozbiljne knjige u vezi toga da li je ona moguća.
Do you maybe know when it's some of the first records about artificial intelligence?
Kad su počeli da govore o tome, da li znate možda u kom veku ili kada, kojoj godini možda?
Well, the field of AI really dates back to the 1950s.
Znači, AI, to područje interesovanja se datira do 50. godina 20. veka.
But from about 1980, there were quite a lot of debates about the possibility of artificial intelligence and arguments for and against.
Ali od 80. godina, oko godine 1980, počeli su da imaju argumente, debate u vezi toga da li je ona moguća i da li treba da bude.
And so there were some very influential books written around that time, which I read as a student when I was studying mathematics.
I bilo nekih ozbiljnih bitnih knjiga koji su napisali u to vreme.
So I had a real interest at that stage, but I didn't really pursue it at that time.
I bio sam zainteresovan već tada, ali nisam baš istražio tada.
And at that time, it was a bit of an abstract debate. The technology obviously wasn't nearly as advanced as it is now.
I u to vreme to je bilo više neka abstraktna debata, tehnologija prosto nije bila na tom nivou kao sad.
But now, given the developments that have taken place in AI over the last 10 years or so, those debates now seem much more important.
Ali pošto se tehnologija razvijala izuzetno brzo, te debate su odjednom prilično relevantne.
And so I've revisited a lot of that material and started to think about those debates again.
Tako da sam pročitao dosta tog materijala i počeo sam opet da razmišljam o tim debatama.
So I suppose that's where my interest lies. And the other motivation for this is thinking about how it interacts with a Christian perspective.
I tako sam se ja zainteresovao, a također jedna druga motivacija jeste kakva je ona interakcija, kakva je ona vezi sa našom hrišćanskom perspektivom.
Because there are really fundamental questions here about what it means to be human, and is there really a fundamental difference between humans and AI?
Jer tu nailazimo vrlo brzo na fundamentalno pitanje šta uopšte znači biti čovjek i moguće li i da li postoji uopšte razlike, ima li uopšte razlike između ljudskog bića i mašine?
Yeah, so and then you are continue to with studying with your master or PhD, or how it went?
I kako ste studirali ovo pitanje?
Well,
Gde ste studirali za ovo?
Yeah, so my PhD was in applied maths and physics in that area.
Moj doktorat je napisan iz primenjene matematike i fizike.
And I did study some philosophy as well.
Također sam studirao filozofiju.
But my interest in AI was just more a general interest at that time.
Ali moje interesovanje za AI u to vrijeme bilo mnogo generalnije.
But when I moved into computer science, then in recent years more of my work has been in the field of AI.
Ali kako sam ušao u nauku računarstva, moje interesovanje i moje studije su se okrenuli prema AI-u.
Looking at reasoning with probability, looking at machine learning techniques and applying them to some healthcare problems, for example.
I gledao sam kako ona radi, kako ona obrazloži stvari, kako koristi modele verovatnoće i kako se ona može da koristi, na primjer, u medicini.
And then I'm particularly interested in the notion of explanation, because this has become a big topic in the field of AI.
I posebno sam zainteresovan za temu objašnjenja, kako ona može da objasni šta radi, jer to je bilo postalo veliko pitanje u oblasti AI-a.
Because AI is able to it's able to do quite amazing things, but quite often we don't know how it does it, how it arrives at its answers.
Jer veštačka inteligencija može stvarno nevjerovatne stvari da uradi, ali često ne znamo kako dođe do njegovih odgovora.
And so the challenge is to try to develop explanations for how it arrives at those answers.
Tako da je onaj izazov koji je pred nama da probamo da ga naučimo da objasni kako je došao do svojih rezultata.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm thinking also about. So you already mentioned about Christian perspective.
Već si pomenuo za hrišćansku perspektivu.
We are Christian, and we are two priests who are talking about popular culture.
Mi smo hrišćani i dvoje sveštenika koji govore o pop kulturi.
And Bera and I already did several topics about artificial intelligence.
I Bera i ja smo već pokrili neke teme u vezi veštačke inteligencije.
Yeah, we watch some movies and like we talk about it. But then something that we see, it is some kind of fear that is showing, because our AI.
I pogledali smo neke filmove i uočili smo da postoji strah u vezi veštačke inteligencije.
Not just, ne samo strah, nego u ljudima se javlja strah.
U ljudima, in people.
I saw also people posting on Facebook, like because of I think I'm not sure what is the reason why, but they are really scared of artificial intelligence. So that's gonna be like something that will take control.
I ljudi se plaše da će veštačka inteligencija preuzeti kontrolu, pišu o tome i na Facebooku i na raznim javnim mestima.
So is there place for fear?
Da li treba da se plaše?
I think we need to distinguish between different types of fears.
Mislim da trebamo da napravimo razliku, da razlikujemo razne tipove straha.
So one of the fears that people might have is that AI will become human-like, will take control, and will, I don't know, eliminate humanity or something like that.
I jedan od nešto čega se ljudi plaše jeste da će veštačka inteligencija postati slična čoveku, da će preuzeti kontrolu i uništiti čovečanstvo.
And I'm very skeptical about that sort of concern.
I ja sam veoma skeptičan povodom toga.
Because I think when we think about how AI works, I don't think it's going to have the sort of will or intentions that we have.
Jer ako razmišljamo o veštačkoj inteligenciji, ona nema volju i interesovanja poput nas.
So it's able to do very impressive things, there's no doubt about that, but I think it will be limited so that it doesn't have those sorts of intentions.
U jednu ruku ona jeste veoma impresivna i nema sumnje u vezi toga, ali ona će uvek biti, po mom mišljenju, prilično ograničena.
So I don't think that there is any real basis for fears about AI taking over the world and destroying humanity.
Tako da ne mislim da su strahovi da će veštačka inteligencija preuzeti vlast nad svetom i uništiti čovečanstva. Ne mislim da su ti strahovi osnovani.
Though that's often the fear that is perhaps presented in the movies about AI.
I u filmovima to često tako bude prikazano.
Where there are more realistic fears is how we go about using the technology and some of the problems that could arise there.
I ono što po meni je mnogo realističniji strah jeste kako ćemo mi koristiti tu tehnologiju.
And so whether we give it, so I think the problem is for us as humans, whether we give too much responsibility to AI to make decisions on our behalf.
Mislim da su problem prvenstveno ljudi i njihova tendencija da daju previše odgovornosti veštačkoj inteligenciji, to jest to može da stvori problem.
And how we use AI and for what purposes.
I kako koristimo AI u kakve svrhe.
And so I think there are a lot of ethical issues around AI. We could think of deepfakes as an example.
Ima puno etičkih pitanja u vezi AI-a, na primjer možemo da mislimo na deepfake tehnologiju.
What's deepfake?
Šta je deepfake?
Well, it's where AI is used to generate false information.
Okay.
Tu AI bude korišćen u deepfake tehnologiji da stvara i pogrešnu informaciju.
And
fake news.
When this, it can be used to generate fake news, or if it's used to now generate fake video material that looks very realistic.
I sada ume da stvori materijal koji nije video materijal koji izgleda realistično, a nije.
And I think there are also concerns around data or privacy and issues like that.
I ima mnogo strahova u vezi naših podataka i naše privatnosti.
So I think there are concerns in those directions, and I think also the use of the technology in warfare, for example.
I mislim da također tehnologija može da bude korišćena u ratne svrhe. I to je opasno.
Or to give another example, how we will relate to this technology, if we relate to it in more human-like ways, I think that could be a concern as well.
I pitanje je kakav mi odnos imamo prema toj tehnologiji, ako da li ga mi smatramo zapravo živim bićem, da li ga ophodimo prema njemu poput kao čoveku.
And we are moving in that direction as the technology becomes more realistic. There can be a tendency to treat it in sort of, in a semi-human like sort of way, and I think that tendency is something we need to be careful about.
I ja mislim da idemo u tom pravcu, imamo tu tendenciju kako se ona razvija i sve više liči na ljude, na zapravo na prava ljudska bića. Mi umemo da ga tretiramo više i više i to mislim da je opasno i moramo da razmišljamo o tome.
So I think there are perhaps legitimate fears around many of these sorts of ethical concerns with AI.
I mislim da tu stvarno postoje opravdani strahovi u vezi etike AI.
And things like bias, for example, our machine learning algorithms kind of bias built into them, and that's a problem.
I one mogu da ponekad ne budu objektivne, već svoje, kako bi rekao, bias. Da vuku u jednu stranu samo debate.
That we tried.
I to smo isprobali.
In the moment of the election, like when Joe Biden win.
Kad je Joe Biden pobedio na američkim izborima, isprobali smo to.
Let's write me a song about Joe Biden, like a winning, and he made me like a really, really cheerful song, about he's amazing guy,
Napisao nam, bio je voljan da nam napiše veoma radosnu pesmu o tome kako Joe Biden pobedio.
So, and then I was like, write me the same, but about Trump.
I onda sam mu rekao da mi napiše isto o Trumpu.
And he said, sorry, but I can't make something what is not true.
I onda rekao, izvini, ne mogu da kažem nešto što nije istina.
It was really like
very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I suppose one of the things is it might sound like I'm being very negative here. There are, I think, legitimate fears or concerns.
Mislim, ne želim da budem previše negativan. Stvarno postoje opravdani strahovi.
But there are also a lot of benefits to this technology as well.
Ali ima puno koristi od ove tehnologije također.
And we see examples of that with, two of the Nobel Prizes that were awarded recently were for work in machine learning.
Dva Nobela su u posljednje vrijeme dati za rad u oblasti veštačke inteligencije.
And the potential for making an impact in science, and especially in the field of medicine, I think is huge.
I ima ogroman potencijal u oblasti nauke, posebno u oblasti medicine.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So me as I first when it came, like first my how to say, when I was facing with artificial intelligence was through ChatGPT. Maybe something earlier, but I didn't notice because ChatGPT really became a big deal.
Prvi put sam se susreo sa AI kroz ChatGPT, a možda to postojalo ranije, ali kroz ChatGPT ušlo u javnost.
And so I have like a really big debate with my wife.
Imao sam veliku debatu sa mojom ženom.
And still we have it.
I dalje to se nastavlja.
So she's really against.
Ona je baš protiv.
Because artificial intelligence now are doing art really fast, really easy, and really like it looks like it's gonna concrete artist, like if I say like that.
I veštačka inteligencija sad stvara takozvana umetnička dela, slike veoma brzo i može da imitira, kao da imitira specifične stilove, imitira specifične umetnike.
And my wife, she's a graphic designer and
Moja žena je
motion
grafički
designer.
dizajner.
And she says like, we all gonna lost jobs.
I ona kaže, svi ćemo izgubiti poslove.
And I said like, no, my attitude about that is not like that, you know.
Moj stav je drugačiji.
I was thinking about like when machine came like a parna lokomotiva. What is
When steam engines came in.
Yeah, industrial revolution when
Kad
it
je parna
came.
lokomotiva došla.
So in that moment people were working everything by hand, you know, when you know industrial revolution came. So many machines zameniti. Change a lot of workers, yeah.
Replaced.
So how that worker, how some people survive because they adjust, you know, and start to using machine, to learn about them and to use in their advance.
Znači, razmišljao sam o industrijskoj revoluciji kako su mašine tada preuzela mesta ljudima i ljudi su morali da se adaptiraju od toga da rade sa svojim rukama u to da uče da koriste te mašine. I mislim da je to analogna situacija na veštačku inteligenciju sad.
So that is something with artificial intelligence. If we miss this tool,
ako ovo izgubimo,
we will lost our jobs if we are working in the area of creativity.
Ako ne razmišljamo dobro, onda možemo da izgubimo naše poslove u oblasti umetnosti.
Of course, I think that
i dizajna.
Of course, I think that what human produce will never be like replaced with artificial intelligence.
Ja mislim da ljudska umetnost nikada neće biti ostavljena u korist veštačke inteligencije.
Because of that question, why somebody make that art?
Zbog tog pitanja zašto se uopšte ljudi bave sa umetnošću.
So then I decide to use artificial intelligence in everything that I can.
I onda sam počeo da koristim AI u svemu što sam mogao.
So like editing, I have software that I put 3 cameras, I put the audios and just connect everything in few buttons, and artificial intelligence make podcast in a 3 to 5 minutes editing something long, hour or more.
I koristim i to i u editovanju, na primjer, kad postavimo 3 kamere, postavimo zvuk i software mi za 3 do 5 minuta izedituje cel podcast od više sati.
Also,
sat vremena.
Yeah, Photoshop and all that, I just do
Photoshop, sve to koristim.
Through that and it's really helpful. You know?
Veoma je korisna stvar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is amazing what the technology can do.
Nevjerovatno je što tehnologija može da uradi.
And I suppose my attitude is, well, there's no point fighting against this. The technology is there and we need to use it.
Moj stav je da nema smisla boriti se protiv ovoga kad je već jednom tu.
I think we also need to understand its limitations.
Moramo da razumemo njena ograničenja.
And to know how to use it properly.
I da znamo kako da je koristimo.
What it's good at and maybe what it's not so good at as well.
U čemu je dobar, u čemu možda nije baš toliko dobar.
And one of the things you do notice with ChatGPT and other large language models is that they can fail over quite some quite simple things.
I ono što možemo da vidimo da u vezi veštačke inteligencije, ChatGPT i drugih modela je da mogu da naprave greške u veoma jednostavnim stvarima.
But there's no doubt there's a lot of practical uses for them.
Ali ima puno praktičnih mogućnosti za korišćenje njihova.
I mean, on the issue of jobs, I think one of the concerns that people have had is that there might be a difference between the industrial revolution and what's happening with AI.
Jedna od stvari zbog koje se ljudi malo brinu jeste da neki su rekli da možda postoji da ima razlike između industrijske revolucije i naše.
And the claim would be that in the industrial revolution, machines replaced our manual labor.
I razlog zašto kažu jeste da u industrijskoj revoluciji su mašine preuzeli ručne radove.
But we still then could move from manual labor to mental labor.
Tako da smo mogli da idemo sa ručnog rada prema mentalnom radu.
But if AI replaces our mental labor, what's left for us to do?
Ali ako nam AI preuzme mentalne poslove, šta nam je ostalo?
But I think that no doubt it's also going to create other jobs as well, and it will make many jobs more efficient.
Yeah.
I također ona sigurno će i stvoriti neke poslove i verujem da će da će otvoriti nove mogućnosti.
So I think the jury is out on this, but I think we'll see more of an evolution of jobs rather than whole-scale replacement of humans.
I ovo još nije ništa sigurno, ali moj osjećaj je, ja mislim da ćemo vidjeti evoluciju poslova, a ne to da veštačka inteligencija preuzme sve.
But I suppose, again, thinking of a Christian viewpoint, though, I think one of the things that I would want to highlight here is the value of work.
Ali iz hrišćanske perspektive bi želeo da stavim akcenat na vrednost rada.
Amen.
Because some people would have had the mindset, well, if AI can do all our work for us, that would be great. We can just let the technology do it, and we can have a different kind of life where we don't have to work.
Jer neki bi rekli, ako AI može da uradi nešto umjesto nas, onda možemo da imamo lagodan život i veštačka inteligencija će da radi umjesto nas.
But I think work is an important part of life. I think it's not where we find our full meaning and purpose, but it is part of it.
Yeah.
Ali ja mislim iz hrišćanske perspektive da je rad veoma bitan deo našeg života. Nije ona koja nam da potpunu svrhu i sve, ali je prilično bitno.
And if we can use AI to make us more productive and effective, well, that's great.
Yeah. I ako možemo da koristimo AI da budemo produktivniji, korisniji, efektivniji, što da ne.
Yeah. So you said that the industrial revolution moved from manual to mental. Maybe this artificial intelligence moved from mental to spiritual work.
Interesting.
Rekao si da za industrijskoj revoluciji je išlo od ručnog do mentalnog, možda za vreme veštačke ćemo ići od mentalnog do duhovnog rada.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, and I think one of the things here is that where the limitations of AI lie are about what is most fundamentally human.
I mislim da je to interesantna ideja i dovodi do nas do misli da ono gde je veštačka inteligencija najviše škripi jeste upravo povezano sa onom šta znači biti čovjek.
So, it can be very useful for doing a lot of very repetitive sorts of tasks.
AI može da bude veoma koristan u repetitivnim zadacima.
But when it comes to things that are, I suppose, have more of a focus on our humanity, things like morality, things like our relationships with other human beings, then I think that's where AI is much more limited.
Yeah.
Ali čim dođemo do pitanja koje su povezana sa našim fundamentalnom humanošću, ljudskošću, ona kao poput etike i odnosa, ona postaje sve više i više ograničena.
And those are the areas precisely where we don't want AI to take over. We've got to, our humanity is important and we don't want to lose that to technology.
I ona su područja gde ne smemo da damo kontrolu AI-u, jer čovečanstvo je bitno.
So I kind of agree with your point about spirituality actually there.
Cool,
Tako da se ja zapravo slažem sa tvojom misli u vezi duhovnosti.
Yeah, when we go again in the context of Christianity, so do you see artificial intelligence, actually the church can benefit from artificial intelligence in case if we are looking some ministry or some missionary work or evangelistic events, or I don't know, so do you see some in spreading the gospel?
Da li misli da crkva može da ima koristi od AI-a u misiji, u eventima, u evangelizaciji, gde god?
Well, I think one clear way in which it can be used is in terms of translation.
Prevod je jedna od načina kako ona može da pomaže puno.
So whether that's translating the Bible or whether that's translating other Christian literature books and so forth, I think there's a real benefit here.
To prevođenje može biti prevod Biblije, a može također bude prevod raznih knjiga. Mislim da to može da bude veoma korisna.
Now that's not to say that it will be able to do all of that. It's not as if there won't be a need for human translators as well, but it can do a lot of the heavy lifting of that.
Ali nije naravno kao da ona ume da sve prevodi sama po sebi. Naravno, bit će potrebni prevodioci koji su ljudi, ali može da uradi puno tih težih zadataka.
And I'm sure there are other areas, I mean, when we think about administrative tasks, financial processing and so forth that churches and other Christian organizations have to do, those could also benefit perhaps.
I također ona može da pomaže u administrativnim poslovima i u finansijama sa kojima crkve i organizacije misijske treba da se pozabave. Ona može da bude veoma korisna u tim oblastima.
And I mean, you talked about podcasts and things like that, so I think you have more knowledge than I do on that front.
Ili što si pomenuo sad za podcastove, mislim da ti znaš tu više nego ja.
So you probably heard in that it was like I'd say like experiment in some of German church, like that chatbot preached the first sermon. Did you heard about that?
Verovatno se čuo za propoved koji je dao Veštačka, jedan chatbot
why
u
is
Nemačkoj.
That not impossible?
Zašto je to nemoguće? Kako je to uopšte moguće?
Actually, that was experience,
to je bilo kao eksperiment.
They weren't how to say serious about that.
Nisu bili ozbiljni u vezi toga.
Well, I mean, this is an interesting one because I mean, how good a sermon could it produce? Potentially quite a good one.
To je dobro pitanje, jer koliko dobar ona propoved koju on napravi, potencijalno može da bude i dobra stvar. Baš dobra.
But I think this again goes back to our point about human responsibilities. So there is a responsibility on the pastor or the preacher that the idea with a Christian sermon is that they're trying to understand God's word and to speak it to people.
I tu dovodi se u pitanje i odgovornost. Mislim, dolazi u igru odgovornost pastora, propovednika, jer na kraju krajeva ono što propovednik ili pastor rade jeste da pokušavaju da prenose Božju reč.
So I think there's a problem if we then hand over that responsibility that we as humans have to machines to do it for us.
I mislim da je prilično problematično tu odgovornost prebaciti mašinama.
And so I think there's a real danger that we would lose the human contact, the human responsibility in this case.
I mislim da postoji realna opasnost da izgubimo ljudski kontakt, ljudsku odgovornost u vezi toga.
Because there's a spiritual process that we need to go through in terms of trying to prepare the material and of course to hear what God wants to say through us to other people.
Jer postoji stvarno tu neka duhovna priprema da pređemo, koju treba da pređemo kada propovedamo, da čujemo što Bog zapravo hoće da kaže svom narodu.
And I suppose this would bring me to a general point about what AI can do, and that is that it could perhaps simulate what humans do very well.
I ovo dođemo do te generalne ideje šta veštačka inteligencija može zapravo da uradi. Ona može da simulira ljude prilično dobro.
But a simulation is different from the reality, and that could be lacking something really quite fundamental.
Ali simulacija se razlikuje od realnosti i u simulaciji može da fali nešto veoma osnovno, veoma bitno, suštinsko.
And that would apply in the case of preparing the sermon, but it would also apply in the context of morality, because the machine is it's not a moral agent.
To je istina u vezi propovedanja, pripremanje propovedi, ali također u oblasti moralnosti, jer veštačka inteligencija nije moralni agent.
So again, I think it brings us back to questions about appropriate and inappropriate uses of the technology.
Tako da dođemo opet do pitanja dobre i loše, dobrog i lošeg korišćenja tehnologije. Ispravnog i neispravnog.
Yeah. So maybe from your perspective also, if you have some ethical issues that you see that can be potential danger for the AI and people in the future.
Vidiš li neku vidiš li neki moralni etički problem koji može da nam stvori probleme u budućnosti?
So, I mean, I've mentioned a few of them already about things like bias and false information and things like that.
Par stvari sam već pomenuo, pristrasnost i pogrešne informacije i sve to.
And I think those are quite significant issues and we do need to tackle them.
I one su bitne i moramo da se pozabavimo sa njima.
And related to that are things like hallucinations with ChatGPT and other large language models.
I povezano je sa tu mi takozvane halucinacije ChatGPT-a i drugih modela koji se osnovaju na drugih jezičkih modela.
What do you need by hallucination?
Šta su halucinacije?
Well, sometimes they can just make up.
Ponekad samo izmiste nešto.
So, for example, I can't remember what the topic was, but I asked it to give me a summary of some academic literature on a topic.
Jednom sam ga pitao da mi da sumarizaciju nekog akademskog članka.
And to provide some references in this area.
I da mi da neke reference u njoj.
And it all looked very good.
I prilično dobro izgledalo.
Until I went and looked up the references and they didn't exist.
Dok nisam pogledao reference i oni nisu postojale.
Now they looked very realistic. Some of them were the names of actual researchers.
Veoma su izgledale realistične, neke od njih su imali imena pravih istraživača.
Or actual journals, but they weren't the titles of the articles.
Yes. Da, ili su imali prave novine, tako ne.
Lažne novine.
Lažna. Ne, pa koristili su imena pravih, ali su.
But let me, thinking a bit further ahead. So there are a number of ethical issues that I think we need to think about at the moment. We need to think about explainable AI so that we understand how it's arriving at the decisions it's making.
Tako da ima par stvari koje treba da promislimo, treba da razmišljamo o tome kako može AI da objasni sebe.
But one of the things that I think we need to think about in the slightly longer term concerns how AI technology might be used to try to enhance human behavior.
I ono što trebamo da razmišljamo na duže staze, ovo je za kraće staze, a za duže staze trebamo da razmišljamo o tome kako AI može da bude korišćeno da upotpuni ili diže ljudsko ponašanje na neki novi nivo.
So there is this idea that we could be using AI and biotechnology to enhance humanity.
Možemo da postoji ideja da bismo mogli da koristimo to u bioinženjeringu, da upotpunimo, napredimo ljudsko iskustvo.
So this is transhumanism.
Transhumanizam.
Thinking of here. And so the idea that we could implant chips into our brains, for example, to enhance our memory.
Neki razmišljaju čipovima koje bi stavili u mozak da bi nam unapredili memoriju.
And this technology is becoming more feasible.
I to sve više i više verovatno izgleda.
And could help with certain types of conditions that people have.
I moglo da pomaže sa nekim bolestima koje ljudi imaju.
But my concern here would be that we would then use that technology to really try to change humanity in quite a fundamental way.
Ali moj strah je da ćemo koristiti ovo da promenimo ljudsko ponašanje.
It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing in one sense that if I could enhance my memory and have access to all sorts of information just directly by thought, this would almost be like superhuman powers.
I na papiru to zvuči super. Ako bi imao unapređenu memoriju i mogao bi bolje da se setim stvari i budem brži, to zvuči odlično kao super čovjek.
But I do have concerns about that because, again, thinking about who we are as humans from a Christian perspective, I think we've got to be really careful here that we're not trying to change what a human being is.
Ali moram da priznam da se malo brinem u vezi toga jer kao ljudi ne smemo da izgubimo iz vida šta ljudsko biće jeste.
And for some people, some of the authors, and it is the more speculative end of this, but some of the authors see AI and technology as a sort of solution to all our human problems.
I neki blago spekulativni autori vide AI kao potencijalno rešenje za sve naše ljudske probleme.
For eternal life or?
Well, that's one example of it, actually.
Da, pravo i za večni život.
I think Yuval Noah Harari somewhere says that death is just a technical glitch.
Yuval Noah Harari, na primjer, kaže da je smrt samo jedan glitch, samo jedan bug u sistemu.
So we will be able to use technology to overcome this and potentially live indefinitely.
I kaže da ćemo moći da koristimo tehnologiju možda i da živimo večno.
Now, when it's put in these sorts of terms, it does seem to me that people are thinking of AI and technology as almost like a surrogate religion.
I kada se tako razmišljaju o takve stvari govore, meni se čini da ljudi gledaju na AI kao na neku pseudo veru.
They look at the fundamental problems of the world in terms of unhappiness and suffering and death.
Gledaju na fundamentalne probleme sveta poput bolesti, patnje i smrti.
And then they identify what their diagnosis of this problem is that we are limited physical beings.
I oni kažu da problem leži u tome što smo ograničena ljudska bića.
So technology might help us to escape from these physical limitations.
Tako da nam tehnologija može da pomaže da izbegnemo ta ograničenja.
But as a Christian, I want to say I think the problem is a different one.
Ali kao hrišćanin moram da kažem da ja mislim da je problem na drugom mestu.
The real fundamental problems we see in the world aren't due to the limitations of our physical bodies.
Naši pravi fundamentalni problemi ne leže u tome što smo ograničeni kao u fizičkom smislu.
It's a spiritual problem.
Nego je zapravo problem duhovne prirode.
And technology can't solve that.
I tehnologija to ne može da reši.
Thank you.
Hvala.
So that means that human can't do what God can.
To u suštini znači čovjek ne može da uradi ono što Bog može.
And that we shouldn't have that fear that that's gonna happen. Yeah.
Tako da ne trebamo da se plašimo da će se to desiti.
God is God.
Bog je Bog.
God is God, so I don't think we should have a fear that AI will do that.
Bog je Bog, tako da ne trebamo da se plašimo da će veštačka inteligencija to da uradi.
What we maybe should be more concerned about is what humans will try to do with AI.
Yeah. Ono što trebamo zapravo malo da nas brine jeste šta će ljudi pokušati da urade sa AI.
And I think that is a more legitimate concern.
I mislim da je to opravdaniji strah ili opravdanija briga.
Yeah. So this is podcast about pop culture.
Ovo je podcast o pop kulturi.
And I will ask you a question. Maybe you don't have anything prepared, but yeah, can you suggest some movie or TV show about artificial intelligence?
Možda
maybe some your favorite or something that we can watch and then discuss.
Možda nemaš pripremljeni odgovor, ili možeš li da nam preporučiš neki film ili seriju u vezi veštačka inteligencija koju možda možemo da pogledamo?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
To je odlično pitanje.
And I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer.
Nisam prava osoba da to odgovorim.
But there's obviously a lot of interest in AI in the movies.
Yeah. Ali očigledno postoji veliko interesovanje za veštačku inteligenciju u filmovima.
And often it is portrayed in very negative terms.
Yes. Često je ona prikazana u veoma negativnom smislu.
But I think that can still be interesting, even just to see the concerns that humans have about AI.
Ali interesantno da vidimo šta ljudi razmišljaju, kakve brige imaju u vezi AI.
And even if it raises concerns that I think are or fears that I think are unfounded, I still think it tells us something interesting about the concerns we might have about AI.
Ali također čak i ako oni strahovi možda i nisu osnovani, ona i dalje takvi filmovi može da i dalje govori o tome šta mi razmišljamo o AI.
I think as long as we approach it with a critical mind and think about what's science fiction versus science fact.
Moramo da razmišljamo u vezi toga šta je naučne fantastika i šta su naučne činjenice.
So I think others might have more detailed suggestions and ideas for you on that front.
Mislim da drugi mogu da ti daju bolje odgovore na tom frontu.
Okay, that is fair enough. Thank you so much for being a guest in our podcast.
Yeah. Hvala puno što si došao da nam budeš gost.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been great to discuss this with you.
Drago mi je da smo mogli da budemo tu da razgovaramo o ovome.
And I hope the students tomorrow gonna enjoy your lectures.
Nadam se da će studenti sutra da uživaju u tvojim predavanjima.
Thank you, I hope so too.
And thank you for your sermon in the church. So.
I hvala za propoved u crkvi malo.
Thank you that you didn't use artificial intelligence for that.
Hvala što nisi koristio AI za to.
How do you know?
Kako znaš?
ChatGPT told me.
Rekao mi ChatGPT.
Ljudi, hvala vam, ovo je bila POPKultura. Pratite nas, podelite ovaj video, komentarište šta vam se najviše dopalo i dajte neku sugestiju možda za neki video koji, to je za neki film, seriju koju možemo pogledati na ovu temu. Vidimo se. Ćao, čao.